Hey, what is up, guys? Welcome back to the 40K Cafe, and thanks T for the question. Bjorn the Fellhanded, he is a legendary individual, especially among Space Marine, and for all intents and purposes, is technically the oldest living warrior currently around in the Imperium, more than 10,000 standard Terran years old. Although it is on a technicality, seeing as he is interned into a Dreadnought. But how exactly did Bjorn get here? You see, before Bjorn was actually interned into his sarcophagus, Bjorn actually fought alongside his Primarch, Leman Russ of the Space Wolves. His story for us starts off in Prospero Burns, and as we know it, is a member of the Third Company of the Vilka Fenrica, or the Space Wolves. At the beginning of the Horus Heresy, before Magnus would go ahead and do his big ol' oopsies, he would be the caretaker of the Remembrancer Caspar Hauser, required to keep guard over the Remembrancer throughout all the campaigns of the Vilka Fenrica, and eventually this would continue up until Prospero. On this planet was the very beginning of Bjorn's greatness. You see, some spawn, whether it be created from the Thousand Suns or be a Neverborn, would take interest into Caspar Hauser. This creature's plan was to use Caspar Hauser as the conduit for the mutual annihilation between the Thousand Suns and the Space Wolves. Once the creature finally revealed itself and attempted to eliminate Hauser, Bjorn would intervene. The creature would go on to use all forms of witch and dark magic, and eventually send a corrupted flow of energy through Bjorn's hand. Despite this, Bjorn would land blow after blow against his opponent, never buckling or yielding. It wasn't until the assistance of reinforcements and the Sisters of Silence and the pariah gene of the Sisters of Silence that the corruption would cease. Unfortunately, though, this would only put a hold on the corruption, and so it was said that Constantine Valdor himself would cut off the hand at the elbow from Bjorn. It was this event, amongst many others, that would assist in Bjorn rising through the ranks and stand out amongst his fellow comrades. When Bjorn would become eligible to lead a pack of his own, his pack unseemingly would always be singled out in order to lead or fight amongst where the battle was thickest. But despite all this, Bjorn's pack would stand out. They would humble tyrants and opponents and butcher aliens beyond counting, never showing mercy to any enemy of the Emperor. Eventually, Bjorn and his pack would go up against Arvak the Slaughterer. This was a renowned demon of Khorne, and all those that would join Bjorn in his assault would unfortunately perish. Ultimately, though, Bjorn's relentless assault would end up leading to his victory, as when the Primarch would arrive, he would see his own son emerge victorious. Despite this victory, though, it would haunt him for millennia to come, as he would never forgive himself for losing his fellow kinsman. Bjorn would end up swearing that he would take his revenge against Arvax because he merely drove him off. And once Arvax resurfaced, both Leman Russ and Bjorn raced against time in order to meet him in battle. As fate would have it, Bjorn would be the first one to meet the Arch Slaughterer in battle. Leman Russ in the midst of battle would look on in pride as he would see Bjorn rip out the throat of Arvax with his lightning claws. With this, Bjorn took his revenge for his fellow kinsman and was promoted to be the personal guard of Leman Russ. Some say that it was Bjorn's loss of kinsman and his sole survival that would lead him to be the most understanding of the Space Wolves when Leman Russ would announce his departure into the Eye of Terror. From this moment forward, every 1,000 years on Russ's disappearance, Bjorn would awaken from his dreadnought and retell the story of Russ's disappearance. Before his internment and in Russ's absence, Russ would promote Bjorn to lead the Space Wolves while he was gone. After accepting the role in many years to come, Bjorn would unfortunately be laid low and must be interned into a dreadnought. This would occur during the Proxima Rebellion, where unfortunately he would sustain such injuries that he could not be healed or repaired, and thus was laid into a sarcophagus. But just because he was put in the dreadnought does not mean that the tales of his legendary actions end. For in the 32nd millennium, Bjorn would personally face off against none other than the arch nemesis of the Space Wolves, Magnus the Red. Although Bjorn did not emerge victorious, to lay low and injure a Daemon Ascended Primarch is no easy feat. Bjorn would injure Magnus with both fire and blade before Magnus could recover and unfortunately incapacitate the hero. Magnus would end up being stunned at the fact that he would recognize Bjorn's soul as one of the individuals that was there during the burning of Prospero. This would buy enough time for the rest of the Vilka Fenrica to rescue the hero. Bjorn the Fellhanded is 100% about that life and hands-on sight. He is one of the most unique and well-written individuals throughout the history of 40K. Probably one of my favorite Space Marines, but that's also because there's just so much well-written lore about him. I hope you enjoyed this video and it answered your question on who is Bjorn. Let me know what you want to hear next, and follow for more.